Our next guest left a cush job in the energy sector working for BP to go on and invent a fully functional jetsuit. Yes, you heard me correctly, a fucking jetsuit. He started Gravity Industries, an aeronautical innovation company that set out to make the world's first jetsuit in 2017. After many variations and iterations over the years, it's now a sight worthy of being in the next futuristic James Bond movie with its modern and elite performance aesthetic. Not to mention he was a Royal Marine Reservist, an ultra-marathon runner, had a phenomenal TEDx talk, and holds a Guinness Book of World Records to his name. His life portfolio is an A++. He is the real-life Tony Stark, and I am certain that he's going to be a historical, innovative figure in the future that generations to come will learn about in school. Please welcome our next guest to the show, Richard Browning.
So by the time we got to 2017, we launched the company in April Fool's Day, actually, 2017. It went kind of crazy. And yeah, since then, we've done 225 events in 38 countries. We've got collaborations with 7 different militaries. We've somewhat launched our race series, although COVID slowed that down. We've trained over 500 people to varying degrees to fly. We've got a team of 20 people. We're actually a profitable company, crazily enough. And there's a fun accidental raise back in 2017, and we haven't raised money since then. So yeah, it's now there is actually, not only is it a profitable company, but actually there is a whole entertainment division and a very serious paramedic and military mobility division, which I think we've got so far to go with that. I mean, the stuff we've done, some of it public, not a lot of it public, with various different special forces all over the world is just crazy. I mean, I obviously believe in what we do, but I come away from those things going, holy crap, I can't believe we can actually go and do that. I mean, one of the recent paramedic flights was a really good example of that. You know, we obviously turned up knowing what we could do, but I did that 2,000 foot climb and 1.2 miles kind of horizontally in bad weather, fog, rain, and whatever. And I did it in 3.5 minutes. Now, nothing on the planet can do that because, I mean, I suppose some military helicopters could have got through the fog and the wind and the rain and stuff, but all the medic ones can't. So yeah, there's some pretty crazy stuff out there that we've been able to do.
I read your book, and I have to say, your story of how you got to where you are is one of the more inspiring ones, because a lot of people, not a lot of people, but there is a sub-factor of people that come up in the world and that do incredible things that come from like nothing. They didn't have a good job, they didn't have a family and all of these things, and they really didn't have distractions. You, on the other hand, pretty much built your whole life, a really good life, it seemed in the book, and you kind of had to like reverse engineer the process of the startup journey. And that was pretty interesting for me to read because I'm kind of in the same position, and it's fascinating. So those early years of building the suit and getting all the things to work and like figuring out and engineering the foot placement at first and realizing that your feet are unstable and unreliable in flight, and you know, having to reposition and just the way your brain works is really fascinating to me personally. So can you talk about maybe those early stages of the startup journey? Take a little bit different angle than probably a lot of people want to talk about the suit, all the future, and we'll hopefully get there. But I'm really fascinated with those process of how you built not only just engineering the first jet suit, but also a company based around this that's now profitable in 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of cool to mention it, really. I mean, yeah, everybody gets very excited about flying around like a superhero, and that was not the intention, but it's cool that people make that link. But actually, yes, the less glamorous but thing I'm almost more proud of is indeed turning a ludicrous idea like this into something that's now a profitable business that employs a bunch of people, that's, you know, changing the game in a number of industries. Because you can see any number of crazy inventions on YouTube that, you know, enjoy a few million hits and then go away. And, you know, that plumber or retiree or, you know, homemaker or whatever, brilliant, they've done that, but they've not gone and created any longevity out of it. And I was very eager to try and do that. And that has been really hard. I mean, I employed a lot of experience in business that I had from, you know, running a trading book. Strangely enough, that's about making lots of mistakes, but hopefully on aggregate, enough of the risks you've taken aren't going to drag you down, and on average you head in the upwards direction. That's the idea of a trading book, and actually that feels very like doing what we do. It's all about managing downside risk, really. But yeah, I had a weird perspective because, you know, I experienced, as it says in the book, you know, I experienced this journey once already with my father, who, lived that classic entrepreneur's dream of it's going to be amazing and glitzy and glamorous and it's going to be cool, and watching all the, everything you can imagine and more go wrong. And we've engineered our company to be able to survive all that. Anybody listening to this who's set up their own business, that will resonate. It's amazing how much stuff, how many headwinds you have to kind of overcome. And unfortunately, a lot of businesses don't work out, and his didn't work out, and it cost him his life in the end. He took his own life because of the downside just wasn't survivable in an ultimate kind of way. So it sort of very painfully taught me a lesson when I was 15 of, have the crazy dreams, and everybody needs those to be able to go and achieve unusual things. But you just got to make that journey recoverable. And I mean, financially, safety wise and reputationally, and every move you make as far as possible, you've got to plan for that not working out. And I guess, my father did his best to do that, but in the environment, when he was operating, it was, quite some time ago now. And it was pretty hard to do that. And so, yes, I built a successful career in business and learned lots of lessons and accumulated some resources. But my God, it was painful and stressful and really difficult to wrench myself away from that comfort zone and sort of put it all at risk. Well, no, put it all at risk for pursuing something as mad as this. And it took a lot of support from my family and an awful lot of self-belief, but also massively not believing it fully myself. But it's very difficult. All I can offer is that you just have to, all I can offer is just have to keep planning. What's the worst that can happen? And can I really live with that? Can I get back up again? Innovation is all about relentlessly failing at things in the pursuit of that breakthrough. And if the first couple of failures drag you down or kill you or put you in prison, it's not really how it's going to work. Right. It's tough.
It's kind of interesting because I feel like, going back on the point quickly with your father, it's a very tough story. It's one that resonates with me with a similar situation in kind of my childhood. It really is almost a driving force in a lot of ways too. If you have the mindset to like springboard off of those hardships. And we really do live in a very unique time where technology and innovation can meet at this peak top point where things can really drive forward at scale. And I feel like, something as sophisticated as your suit, the technology just probably, I'm assuming your father wasn't trying the jetsuit, but other things probably similar in his world, like at scale, they didn't have the capabilities we do now. Not to mention the ability to share it online with social media, get essentially free marketing. It's incredible where we are.
It is. It's not. I mean, it's daunting, I think, to young people nowadays to kind of look around. I mean, I marvel at my team are all. I'm 43. My team are all in their sort of mid-late 20s, right? And they don't see anything as impossible because there's probably a YouTube film around that can probably show you how to build it, make it, take it apart. It's just your motivation and your time and your energy. That's all that's limiting. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, you have to go to a library to find a book, which 9.5 times out of 10 was not at all relevant to what you were trying to do. It's amazing to think how it's come. But yeah, back to your first point though, I do think adversity, and it's it's a misery of the human condition, but adversity does generate a fight or flight kind of response. And you never wish it upon anybody, but when it happens, you either do disappear in a bit of a hole, or you look at life and think, well, I'm not sure anything could be as bad as that. I'm going to run at it really hard now. Some people could say run away, but I'm going to run really hard at it and try and take on every challenge that's going and not really feel daunted by it. And I think I luckily just took the latter, really. And I'm not very good at sitting still on a beach. I'm very good at just running hard at the next mountaintop, which I've tried to get better at absorbing and appreciating the past mountaintops. But I think a lot of us aren't very good at that. But but yes, this world, this environment, oh my God, it is truly phenomenal. And you're right, it was a confluence of technologies that were sitting there waiting to be exploited in a way no one would be mad enough to imagine. But that is at the core of most technology breakthroughs. I mean, you could argue, we've got two Teslas. I don't want to sound unfair, but the electric motors and the batteries in the early Teslas, especially, I don't think it's fair. I think it's fair to say we're not like custom breakthroughs. They were relatively available, but no one had put together the marketing and the user feel and the package as brilliantly as Tesla has done. And you don't start from scratch. I mean, we used to delight in using child backpack carriers. You take your toddler for a hike,
Right.
with their head here. We used to use those as our backpack structure back in 2016 and even a bit of
Oh, wow.
2017. Because why bother going and building a lightweight, strong
Hmm.
structure that can take a weight roughly the equivalent of a toddler? Now, we'd weave a climbing harness through it, so you were being lifted by that.
Mm,
But actually, what a great, $100 solution to something that could take you hundreds of
absolutely.
thousands of dollars to even get close to making as light and as comfortable. So yeah, no, I agree. It's an amazing time now.
And with that hardware company, in just a few years now, you've got all this innovation. So I mean, it's very visible.
Yeah, in terms of, I mean, I do passionately believe in this innovation thing, and I experienced, the classic big corporate take on innovation when I, was in the big corporate world for 16 years, and I get that you can't be as nimble as a startup, but it was immensely frustrating, and that, I'm liberated now to be able to iterate our systems on a sort of, I don't know, 10-day basis. So, we have some ideas, we change the CAD files, we 3D print it, pretty much everything we do. So that appears either
Wow.
in our printers or the big industrial ones. In fact, there's one hiding behind me, little one, within hours or a few days. And then we go fly that change and then immediately come up with new ideas. So in the time it probably takes for a PA to organize the, design team's next quarterly meeting, we've gone and done probably, half a dozen more iterations. So yeah, our pace of change is, and it's not at all slow, and it's actually increased over the years as well. So
I love
we've got,
that.
Good.
yeah, we've got amazing new breakthroughs coming.
So it's like streamlined from like your head to the drawing board, and then to actually putting ideas into an engineering and the little mini projects and iterations of whatever components you're working on, etc. That's crazy. That's
Yeah,
really awesome.
and actually even better than that, because people say, oh, how many versions have we done? I mean, and that belies a probably misunderstanding of how you can truly operate, because actually we'll have at any one time probably almost a dozen different sub projects going.
Oh
So we'll
wow.
have, a
Wow.
different way of measuring the fuel alongside a different way of managing the angle of the engines, alongside a different material for, I don't know, printing with, alongside, I don't know, a different way to manage the heat around the nozzles. All of these will run in parallel, and some will go really quick, some will be disappointing, some will unlock new areas, some will need to be pivoted.
Right.
And so they're all like rushing along, like graphic equalizers on a 1980s stereo. And you're nudging. My job really is now to nudge each one as much as I can. And every now and then one will go bing, or every now and then one the knob will fall off, and you'll think, well, that's a waste of time. We've learned something, and then we'll move on to the next one. This lab behind me is surrounded by the skeletons of those learning journeys. Let's put it positively. But as on aggregate, every now and then one of these will appear, as like I say, sitting there. One of them will appear as the latest printed file, and we'll go fly it, and we'll just learn a ton within an hour, which will all go back into the next iterations of each one of those 12 projects. So yeah, it's this constantly evolving organic soup of progress. It's really exciting.
Can you talk about some of the upcoming innovations?
Yeah, so some of the upcoming innovations. So yeah, I mean, one that's coming soon is that rather than having one big engine on the back, and to be clear, it was roughly a third of the power on each, so a third, and a third, so the three-legged camera tripod, arms, and rear. Um, we are cranking up the power on the back, but changing the angle of that, and also moving away from one big engine because um, we've come up with a system that can use all one engine type, so you only need one engine type as a spares, because another ridiculous reality of these systems are they all pack into two check-in suitcases, like instant little check-in suitcases, and you can travel anywhere in the world. I just came back from New York
Dang.
36 hours ago, and I'm off to I don't know where, Spain, and then the East Coast, and then LA, all in the next 2 weeks on various events. So it all just
Wow.
goes into check-in baggage, and then you get some diesel or jet fuel from your location you're going to, and that's it. You can go hence 38 countries that we've flown in. But to keep it like that, we ideally are moving towards having one spare engine type rather than two different types of engines, because then if one, you've got to carry more spares. But the other advantage is, and this is truly ludicrous, the current suit starts from cold to get ready to fly in about 45 seconds, which compared to the slow wind up of a helicopter or a private jet is like
Hmm.
ridiculously fast. We've now got that down to closer to 15 seconds. So I could be putting the suit on, I could put it on in about 10 seconds. I could keep talking to you, I could go boop, and then my hands would be free as they start up. And then within 15 seconds, which is, I've probably just talked for another 10 seconds. So by the time I finish talking about
Right.
now, I'd be taking off,
That's
which is
so cool.
ridiculous. I mean, it's not quite the Tony Stark instant and go, but you're getting quite outrageously close to that. So there's just some of the examples.
Can you talk about that story of the TEDx, like your first overseas trip? Like someone invited you, I believe, to come talk at a conference and live demo where you were in that iteration and the complexities just getting to the stage. Please, can you tell the listeners who haven't heard that story, this one? It's very
So
cool.
we launched the company in April 2017, and I got, amongst the thousands of sort of inbound emails and media calls, I got a call from Chris Anderson, who runs TED. It is the I've done some TEDx talks, but this was the big one in Vancouver. The kind of no pressure, but they said I was on the same day as Elon Musk and the Pope, although the Pope dialed in, which is quite funny.
Wow.
But anyway, I'd listened to TED Talks forever at that point. I used to listen running to TED Talks. I thought I did feel like it was a bit of what I want to say, not baptism of fire, but it did feel like that as well. It was a bit like a sort of rite of passage, for any innovator to do a TED Talk at those days. So I was like, wow, I want to go and do that. And then one of the other inbounds had come from a group called it was a VC group called Boost VC down in San Francisco, from a guy called Adam Draper. And I put two and two together, and I convinced them in the end that they would pay my travel to go to San Francisco. And from San Francisco, not very local, I agree, I then traveled to Vancouver, because I thought I could test the gear before I do it. I'd only ever flown it in this farmyard, like a few feet off the ground. And I just said yes to not only doing a TED Talk, but also flying afterwards, which sounded like a great idea for a few seconds and then like a terrible idea. So I thought, if I fall over at that event and that doesn't work, that's the end of this journey. So I went to, got all the gear on the plane. That was a nightmare. I realized there was something called luggage allowance, weight allowance, and the size allowance and all this kind of stuff. And I had to repack all the cases. It's all in the book. I had to repack the cases at Heathrow, on the floor. It wasn't a good start. Anyway, I got there and I had to do a lot of work all night to get the suit kind of working, because it was still a bit of a shambles. I flew in the Boost VC parking lot like they asked me to, and there was like, I don't know, probably 50, 60 VCs there as a bit of an open day. And I was just distracted by, oh my God, I've got to go now, pack it up and take it to Vancouver and do a TED Talk and then fly it again. But Adam rushed up with a tall, skinny old guy, or not that old guy, who turned out to be his father, Tim Draper, a very famous VC in the Valley. And to cut a long story short, they lost their minds and offered me a $650,000 VC investment. It was $500,000, and I haggled them to $650 for 10% of the company I just formed, and they signed it on a $100 bill, which is stuck in our lab wall. So that was our last investment, completely unintended. In fact, we're kicking off another round probably in the next 3 months, and it looks like the Drapers are back in again, which is very nice of them. Anyway, then I went to Vancouver, had to run around, find some jet fuel from Harbour Air. If you know Harbour Air in Vancouver, they're the ones that run the Twin Otters and all those lovely seaplanes out. And I literally walked down with a Rally fuel bag and said, look, I've got a really weird request. Can I buy some jet fuel from you? And they were like, okay. So I filled my fuel bag. Yeah, no, exactly. It was such a weird request. And then I walked back into the convention center with a 5-gallon bag of jet fuel. Again, I operate in a world where no one's even thought of probably putting in place some rules to say they shouldn't do that. Anyway, it's fine. And then I had my little setup room, and I was getting all the gear together and wandered around the convention center because I was on for a couple of days, and I noticed a sort of gingery haired guy with a very loud sort of bomber jacket thing on, and it was Adam Savage from Mythbusters, and I tapped him on the shoulder and said, hey, I love what you do. Do you want to come and be my ground support for this jetsuit thing? And he'd already seen it online and dumped the massive conversation he's having with about 20 people and rushed off with me to go and be my ground support. And so if you look at the footage,
I'm going to this.
Yeah, it's very kind of him. So yeah, he hung out with me for a few days. He's a really good friend now, and I've done subsequent TV things with him. But if you look at the TED film, you can see Adam Savage standing with his back to the camera as being my ground support, just helping me out. And what better ground support guy? And we travel now with a ground support person, usually just to help out. But yeah, he was my very first ground support person. So it was a bit of a roller coaster of 2 weeks, but it all went great. And yeah, we haven't looked back.
So going from that initial investment, you said you're profitable. How long did it take you, and what steps did you take to get the company to profitability and without any further investments? How did you manage that initial investment to become such a successful company in such a short period of time?
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly by being very frugal, we didn't get carried away with ourselves. We also applied the same innovative, small learning journey, small recoverable failures kind of mentality to the commercial side of the business. we would rather than do a nice snazzy render of showing what we could do in I don't know, paramedics or military worlds, we'd actually go and do it as far as possible. And that, I think, built us a really nice reputation of sort of walking the walk rather than talking the talk. And yeah, we just got run off our feet with events. And we'd go and try things. Like I had a vision at one point that I thought that air shows could be a nice sort of win-win of, get some public engagement, get some great social media,
Sure.
bag some money for entertaining the crowds. And we'd have a traveling tour bus around America doing things like Oshkosh and stuff like that. No, turned out not. I mean, maybe it would still work in the US, but it doesn't work anywhere I found, because air shows are mostly the domain of militaries who charge nothing or very little to show off as an advertisement for joining their air force. The Red Arrows or the Golden Eagles, whatever. Is it Blue Eagles, Golden Eagles? I can't remember. You've got various ones
Blue
in the
Angels.
US.
Blue
They
Angels.
charge like Blue Angels. There we go. If they're anything like the Red
There's a
Arrows,
lot
they
of
will charge
animals
virtually
and colors. So yeah, you're
yeah, it's a color and an animal. And the other community, without being unfair, is often wealthy guys showing off their shiny Mustangs and Spitfires, and they don't really charge much either. So we've done a few air shows, but we were sponsored and we bagged quite a lot of money. But that was a really interesting example of, did we go and throw $1 million into a traveling team and tour bus and then go, oh, we're not making any money out of this? No, we just did a few air shows that happened to be sponsored, learned that lesson, and didn't really lose anything, and then moved off and did other things. So we've ended up with, even before COVID, we ended up with a really healthy portfolio of everything from client training, come along, you can still do this. We're setting up a couple of locations in the US, actually. But for 4 years, we've had clients flying from all over the world into the UK, near London, and clip in and learn to fly these, either a half day experience or a full day actual flight training. And that's been a great money earner, connected us with some amazing people, and allowed us to refine the technology to make it ever easier to fly. Like I say, my kids can fly perfectly fine now. That's been a whole division of the company, doing sponsored stuff, doing branded events, doing, Jeff Bezos's event recently for Mars, opening the Japanese baseball season before COVID, 100,000 people, 3 million people on TV. And I mean, you name it, we've been all over the world, again, because it packs into those suitcases and it's very easy to go and do. So the entertainment side has been a massive money earner. But then that has also taught us the lessons about how to be robust and reliable and just pop it out of a suitcase and within minutes go deliver some stressful event first time. If you can do that, then guess what? You can operate in the gnarly world of the military and the medical, community in dark, snowy, miserable mountains with bad intel and things breaking and whatever. That soldier-proof robustness, we've learned that through events. So it's been this lovely self-generating kind of whirlwind of lots of stuff going on.
And it's not from the sales of the jetpacks per se, right? Because last I saw a retail for those, for like someone like me or Keith, which isn't going to happen anytime soon, but when it does, I'm going to email you and your team and say, I bought one. But it's around 400 grand right now. I'm assuming there's not a lot of people, there's probably a significant amount, but not a whole ton yet, who have been able to afford these suits. So a lot of your sales sound like they're coming from the events and whatnot.
Right, so because there's a really big factor here. So not only is it about $400,000, but it's also, there's some small print, which is that we don't even sell you at that for $400,000. You can't just walk up to us and even give us twice that. We still won't give you one. You have to learn to fly one with us, and we have to kind of qualify you to fly. And that's really a polite way of saying we have to see that you're not a complete lunatic and that you're actually sensible. You can't walk into a shop and buy a helicopter and then just have a go and smash it into a tower block or drop it on a crowd of people. Right. For the reasons that I've just made obvious. I had to own the responsibility personally of the reputation of what we do. If we were making motorbikes, I could sell you a motorbike. You can get your license and then go and kill yourself or even some pedestrians. And that's a terrible thing, but we're all used to it, unfortunately. If, the moment somebody, hurts themselves or somebody else with one of our pieces of equipment, and that has not happened in 5 years and tens of thousands of flights. We've not even, touch wood, I'm touching wood everywhere. We've not even broken a bone doing this, right? Yes, we've had lots of tumbles, but they've been, as far as possible, recoverable failures where it's, the energy level is similar to falling off a mountain bike. You can do myself some damage falling off a mountain bike quite easily.
Yeah.
And I used to cycle commute across London for 14 years.
Oh my goodness.
I try and use that as my benchmark. The moment what we do gets more dangerous than that, I kind of draw a line. So I have to own the reputation of this unusual form of transport. So we have sold a few, but it's only to people that we trust and know that are going to be sensible with our reputation. And actually, in some cases, we still keep the equipment on our site. So they come and fly it with us when we've set up the, water location or wherever. So that's really the reason.
That's so sick, man. I'm like, I don't know about you, Keith, but I'm like a jittery little kid right now. The first time I saw your videos, it just got me so excited. Yeah, it's such an incredible invention. It's such an incredible journey. It's such a electric field, I feel like, that you've created, because it must be very easy for you to do collaborations as well. Like I saw the one with you and Bear Grylls, and I'm sure you get a lot of celebrities and people wanting to do things with you. Have there been any like crazy requests from, I don't know, the Saudi prince or somebody that's like, I want to give you $100 million and we're going to do some crazy stuff, or any stories like that?
Yeah. I mean, we've done stuff with people like Bezos and Zuckerberg and Branson. I met Musk at an event, and he wanted to do something just before COVID. We were going to fly at his school, Ad Astra and stuff. I've kind of had the privilege of meeting pretty much everybody. I was on holiday a couple of weeks ago, and two of my team flew in for the Kardashians and delivered that 818 tequila bottle. And I mean,
Right.
you name it, we've done some weird stuff. I suppose one of the weirder ones was in the middle of COVID. I won't name the Middle Eastern country, but it was a friendly one, but it was a slightly crazy one. And there's some guys who were over in London. I don't know how they come over, but they came and saw it and loved it and said, right, come over and show us and train our special forces and whatever and do a demo. And we're like, yeah, but it's COVID. And they just said, oh, we'll send a plane. So we said, oh, okay, well, that's a way around the COVID problems, I suppose. And so, yeah. I sort of thought it was one of those, yeah, right. We get quite a few things that never really happen as well. Anyway, no, they sent a whole C-17, a whole transport plane for us. So in the middle of COVID, we went to a private airfield, drove our 7-ton truck into the back of it because, well, there was lots of room. You can get like 2 main battle tanks in it, so why not? Wow. And they flew us all the way to that Middle Eastern country. Then entirely changed their plans, but we had enough gear in the truck to do it, and we spent a mad week out there in the middle of COVID, training the special forces and stuff, which was pretty wild. Wow. I mean, the novelty of being in a C-17 after a while, it wears off. It's very noisy and miserable compared to being in a normal plane. And watching our tied down truck buck and roll whilst we were taking off. Of course, we all have a sick sense of humor, we watched endless films of what happens when C-17 cargoes break free and how they basically crash and blow up in a fireball. And we were watching our truck like shaking around like this as we took off and everything. Yeah, that was an unusual one. And a lot of the military things, you turn up in a particularly an unusual military country, and they're all allied, I'll be clear. And then they've got these wild ideas, and you have to sort of unpick out of that what's actually doable, and you find yourself doing some pretty wild stuff. I've flown around our aircraft carrier. I've flown off all sorts of different military equipment, done special forces exercises. I've aircraft carrier. I said I've flown around our aircraft carrier.
I hear. Okay.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I should mention about the height thing. So some people think we can only fly like 6 feet off the ground because they often see us doing that. That's deliberate. It's not pushing off the ground. A lot of people would get a black mark for their physics, qualifications here. When you fire a gun, the recoil in your shoulder is not proportional to what you hit, right? So we're firing a gun of air molecules downwards constantly, and that's what's propelling us up. So if you fly off the edge of a cliff, actually, you get a bit more power, perversely enough, because you get less of the hot air bouncing back and going in the engines, which degrades the thrust. So a lot of people seem to think we're only sort of somehow, and I don't know how the physics would work, sort of bouncing our way along the ground. But no, we go low as far as possible simply to manage the risk. And from a military, medical, and entertainment point of view, there's really no need to go up. You're just a target or an uninspiring dot that is going to die if you have an unforeseen technical problem. So no, we tend to fly as low as we can all the time.
So do you get better fuel efficiency with actually in more open spaces because of that less hot air going back into the turbines?
Yeah, I mean, a jet engine is essentially taking air, mixing fuel with it, exploding it constantly, and that expansion of gas is then hosing out of the back of the engine and pushing you that way. if you put warm air in, the ratio of the expansion is slightly less, right? So you want cold, dense, damp air, and then you get monstrous amounts of power. If you go to 6,000 feet in the Arizona mountains, which we've done, or Johannesburg at 6,000 feet, and it's hot, then you get a lot less power. That's why Johannesburg airliners don't take off in the middle of the day, because it's hot and high. Right. So, I mean, it's not really a problem for us. We can just scale the engines a bit bigger to compensate. But yeah, you get better efficiency when it's cold.
Have you ever had things go unintentionally, rubble, rocks, dust, dirt, like go through the turbines and cause it to malfunction or misfire or something and get a little jerk? Or
No, I mean, no, we have something called a FOD cover, foreign object and debris cover. It's basically a mesh you have over the engines.
I'm
that
an idiot,
stops
so.
everything. No, well, no. I mean, lots of people have learned that the hard way, and whether it's fingers or rocks, and none of them are very appreciated in that compressor that's spinning at 120,000 RPM. I once had an engine cable going one on a test bed. 1 minute the cable was there, and next minute a gust of wind blew it, and then there was no cable, and the engine went from 120,000 RPM to 0 in about half a second. That was an interesting observation. So no, I mean that's it's a bit like running. It is, yeah. I mean, letting stuff go in is a bit like running out of fuel. It's an embarrassing reason for crashing. So no, we try and avoid that. But sand and dust, I mean, operating helicopters in deserts, even with filters, is a miserable exercise. They don't enjoy that, so we try and avoid that as much as we can. But yeah, that's solvable.
Wow. I wanted to ask you before real quick on the structure, how you were engineering, you said you had about a dozen projects going on at one time simultaneously, essentially. Do you, from a business perspective, do you kind of compartmentalize each team away from knowing the whole big picture, if you catch my drift? Or are you not afraid of those types of things? You have patents and protection for yourself against those types of things. How do you structure those projects within your own company?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, there's no issue within our team of our, there's no, it's not some sort of Manhattan project where, no one knows why they're building the widget. No, that's quite a nice idea though. But I mean, it's not that complicated system in the sense that I've got 20 people or so, and they've all got a pretty good, in fact, as with most teams, there's an advantage in most of the team knowing what most of the team is doing, so Absolutely. They can raise their hand and go, hang on, why am I doing this if he's doing that? No, but I try and, like any leader, I try and make sure the awareness is constructive but not distracting. Okay. And again, like any leader, you have moments where you go, oh, damn it, why didn't I let them know more about what was going on? And it's mostly about coordinating to make sure that our development pathways are in support of things that are coming up. So, we might be doing something really big with the World Cup that should be confirmed within a week, and that's suddenly going to see us go to a huge number of pilots. Yeah, well, I mean, it'd be kind of fun. That number of pilots.
So I'm excited.
Okay. Well, we I can't go into too much detail, but that will necessitate having 11 pilots in the air at the same time, which we've not had a reason to do before. So having all of that, and they're our team pilots, and I'm trying to get a good number of girls in there as well. We've got quite a few female pilots. There's never quite as many available candidates that have flexible diaries as we.
And
me too.
That's very diverse of you, but I think that's I can't deny your freedom to do that, can I? So that's not really what we're looking for, though. Although okay. I suppose we should have we should have. Look, let's back up from that subject. But yes I'm perfectly fine with all that if we want.
Yes, I am a man.
But it is very cool. We have got a very mixed team of people, actually. But anyway, so that's going to be an example of something where we have to forward plan the development pathway. And often the military stuff, like, you were asking about technology developments. There's one, if you look closely at one of our medical films, where there's quite a cool development of legs in the back of the suit. So what you can do is you come into land for military or medical, you go down on one knee. For military, you take up a fire position. If you then decide you don't want to relocate or exfil, you can just pop out of the suit and the suit stays there standing on legs. If you want to get it back on again, you go down on one knee, lean back, put it on and take back off again. It's very cool. Wow. It's such a basic thing, but to get those legs right was driven by a necessity from actually the search and rescue world, where they wanted to be able to dump the suit, but in a way where you could easily get it back on again. And our up and coming requirements are often driven by what events are coming up.
Okay. That's really incredible. So the future applications of this jet suit, what can we expect as a consumer of the content, and just also, I'm going to put this out there. I think one of these days, very soon, I'm coming out. I think because you have an LA hangar here that does the test flights and teaches people how to operate these. Me and Keith are going to try and jet out there as soon as we possibly can. But for the consumer entertainment side, what types of things can we expect potentially in the near future? Like, are there going to be races, obstacle courses? Like, have you guys played around in those areas yet?
Yeah, so when it comes to flight training, yes, we've got a rig sitting in LA at the moment. COVID's slowed everything down, obviously, but we should quite soon have that set up outside of LA. Another one on the East Coast, another one in Spain, another one in Dubai. It's a model that we've honed relentlessly for 4 years. So there's that. Now, in terms of public facing stuff, the really big thing that got squashed a bit by COVID was we were 3 weeks away from all flying to Bermuda to launch the race series. We had sponsors, we had a load of pilots, we had all the race lights. You imagine like drag race lights going and explosive launches and all sorts of cool stuff, and pylons like the Red Bull air races with the planes, but on a smaller, more intimate scale. Oh my God. I mean, we did some test sort of races, and it's just the most epic fun racing against other people. And because it's over water, if you screw it up, you just fall in the water, you float, you do a bit of damage to the engines, but it's not the end of the world. That is immense fun. I always said we're going to do that, even if it wasn't a commercial thing, we're going to do it just because it's so much fun. But my real vision is that you've got medics, military people, and our private clients all in one amazing kind of race setup, which is being driven by the necessity and the love for doing what you're doing rather than it being sponsored by McDonald's or something. A bit like NASCAR started with bootleggers testing out their cars and people came to watch afterwards. I want this to be driven in that authentic way where we're genuinely meeting as passionate enthusiasts of this, as humans meet machine, kind of testing the limits. And then people come afterwards rather than, like I say, it be a truly just, done for commercial ad breaks. So that will be coming. But again, we're so busy at the moment, that's probably going to be next year, I think now. But it'll be the ultimate destination for clients that learn with us. That's all coming, definitely. But a lot of the capability is being driven by the medic and military worlds, because as I mentioned earlier, the just like with most military technology, the burdens, the demands, it's always, faster, quicker starts, more robust, lighter, lift more, all of this stuff. And it's just an amazing world to get right. And it means we can turn up to commercial events and just deliver so efficiently. It can, with this latest system, it can just take a few minutes to set it up out of a suitcase and immediately go flying. It's crazy. And it's just been driven by the burdens of turning up to military events and learning what they require, and us then, going and engineering it.
What are some of the general capabilities for the military and paramedic? I know there's probably some sensitive things, but what are some of the cooler things that you guys are developing or in the works of for those things?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth. So there's some, often you read this in social media. There's some people who, bless social media commentary, that don't really understand the medical military world. I mean, I was in the Royal Marines in the UK for 6 years, so I've got a fair idea of that world. I've learned a lot about the medic world from going and pretending to be one with the actual medics. Now, the medic world reached out to us and said, oh my God, we've got a real vision for this. And I was like, well, I can't take people to hospital really with this stuff. Scaling it to do that is going to be silly and dangerous. Actually, I learned something which I wish I could get to everybody's brain before they go and comment. It's not taking them to hospital, which is the critical thing. It's the first responder. It's the paramedic on a motorbike cutting through the traffic to get to the casualty, to stop their blood loss, to get their breathing going again, and to manage their pain, and to triage and report back the condition of the casualty. That is all the priority list. That is what matters. That's just like a battlefield casualty and tourniqueting the missing leg. If you don't do that in 5 minutes, they're going to bleed out and die. So don't bother calling the ambulance. It's not taking that now tourniqueted patient to hospital. Yes, you'd like to do that within an hour or two, but you've got time. The medic world that we work in is where you've got a cardiac patient on a mountain. You can't get the helicopter in because of fog, and it's an hour and 20 minutes to walk up the mountain. We then fly that same route in 3 minutes. I mean, it's ridiculous. We just keep them alive because you get there and do what do you got? I'm not a medic. The electric thing that gets your heart going again. See, I'm like I say, you know what
Yes,
I'm talking about.
defibrillator.
But anyway, so that's the medic world.
Defibrillator, yes.
So there we go. Yes, exactly. So you can now see, can't you? Paramedic on a motorbike. That's exactly why would that exist if it was to take people to hospital? You see them slinging them across the back of the motorbike, do you?
True.
Anyway, so that works really well. In the military world, again, people make the mistake of thinking you need twin miniguns and you've got to hover above the battlefield and strafe, like, using your hands and whatever. Right, yeah, exactly. So they think, well, it's obviously useless because we're going to hear you coming and you can't use your hands and you can't sit up with the big guns. And, they just have no idea of how the actual military works. So the military doctrine is fire and maneuver, right? You are firing aimed shots when you're in cover from sight and from enemy fire, and then you're up and moving when there's nobody shooting at you, right? So you're not running through a field trying to shoot, right? That's just stupid. If you're doing that, you've really got something wrong, or it's all going pear-shaped. So this system should be thought of in the military world as simply the maneuver leg of fire and maneuver, but now super fast over any terrain in night or day, cliffs, minefields, rivers. You land and then you take up a fire position again, right? Top cover, sniper, or whatever. Now, that said, we built, and it's live, a helmet steered suppression system. So as you're flying in and landing on that ship or taking that building or whatever, if somebody does pop up, you can make the decision to peel away an index, or you can go and dump some suppressive capability on the place you need to land. It's really not rocket science. But does that mean you're hovering in complete sight of the enemy in the middle of the battlefield, taking rounds? And no. So as a result, we've done endless things. So, I can go into more detail about how some of the sort of concept of operations work. But suffice to say, we have absolutely torn up the rule book in almost a dozen different scenarios, from ambush drills to exfilling from OPs, observation positions, to drone reconnaissance, to a tactical bound ahead of a roving terror threat in a city when the roads are all jammed. I mean, it's a whole nother podcast on what we can do. But it's amazing how the very senior leadership get it, the frontline operators get it, the middle layer don't know what box to put it in. So that's been a bit of a delaying factor, but it was the same with the tank and the helicopter.
Yeah, that's really incredible. So what I'm hearing is there's kind of like subset specific, how would I put it, use cases per industry, we'll call it. Are you customizing suits kind of like a little bit tweaked? It sounds like maybe the core suit is essentially the same, but maybe some modifications for like a holster for a rifle, or are you guys working with things like that too, or?
Yeah, you often see some custom modifications, like you don't need a helmet steered sidearm when you're going in to find a medic casualty.
Yeah, true.
So there are certain customizations. What's quite nice though is actually super reliable, very fast starts, lots of reserve power, ever easier and more comfortable to fly, even better. We used to use heads-up systems. It's a waste of time. Put a wire in, it's much easier. All the information system. You'll actually find a lot of them have massive overlap. If you're able to operate in horrendous, battlefield conditions, simulated conditions, well, guess what? Turning up on a sunny day in California to deliver that event becomes even easier because it's just an easy walk in the park.
Right. So you guys are also developing your own software as well, or it sounds like you've kind of moved away from that, more hardware based, more reliable?
We have our own software to control the system, to orchestrate the engines. Each engine has its own inbuilt like firmware brain, which we don't meddle with. We got that custom built for us. Oh, okay. But yeah, we have our own software system. That pendant thing you see if you look closely, that's down here, you just glance down and see all your engine data and stuff. That's all ours. That's quite clever. It's got quite a lot of interesting fail-safe systems in there now, and that have been built up over the years.
Oh wow! Could you blow somebody back with the jet engines? Like if someone popped up and you could just get back,
You can do if you really want to do that, and we've done that with like oil barrels and stuff.
Oh wow!
If you want to do that, actually, you need to, and I can't see inside this window, but if you're gonna point one arm that way, then you need to, because of physics, point the other arm that way. So you're actually doing that. Otherwise, you'll just go back.
True.
Newton's laws, you can't escape them. You can in Marvel, but you can't with reality. So yeah, actually, if you hold your arms out either way, then the thrust is going both ways. You'll stay still, and you'll blow anything either side away from you.
Very cool.
Yep.
But that thrust must be quite hot.
It's funny, right? So you can actually put out fires with it. So if you tipped a load of gasoline on the floor, please don't do this, anybody, but if you put a load of gasoline on the floor, and we burn diesel and jet fuel, which are equally as benign, right? You can put matches out, again, don't do this, but you can put matches out in diesel or jet fuel. Jet fuel sounds terribly exciting and very explosive. It really isn't. Gasoline is. But you can put gasoline on a tarmac floor, let's say concrete floor, start up this engine, point the engine at the floor, and it'll just vaporize and blow it away and dry it out beautifully. They use jet engines to put out oil fires. That velocity of air coming out, yes, it's hot, and yes, you don't want to put it on exposed skin, but you can thrust it across a jean-clad leg for a second, and you'll just feel a push. You won't even feel any heat. Air has a very low specific heat capacity. In other words, it carries energy very poorly. Water is horrendous, right? That's why a steam burn is awful. It'll flay the skin off you. Whereas an air burn, it's got no guts. So whilst you don't want to disrespect it, actually every foot away from the exhaust, the velocity and the heat energy drops exponentially. So I could point it at your face 20 feet away and it would just be like a warm hairdryer. It's amazing. And as you come gradually closer, you know, it's okay, it's going to get more and more aggressive, but it's amazing how it's not a problem. Again, it's a misconception. People think everything's going to be immediately caught on fire and blow up, but that's why people didn't go and build this.
True. That's an interesting point you make, because you guys are the first company, Gravity Industries, was the first company to successfully produce the jetsuit, and I don't know of anyone else that has probably even attempted what you have to your capabilities. I'm assuming there may be some people trying to mimic what you've done, but you have literally started an industry. I've seen some like footboard stuff. I've seen some other concepts that seem like, and I'm not trying to toot your horn,
a few.
they don't seem as constructed, as engineered, as thought out, and not as successful for sure. So it's really interesting how people conceive, you know, I could have done that, or and I'm not saying that about this, but in general, like the innovative climate, a lot of people, they say the wealthiest place on earth is the graveyard, because that's where all ideas go to rest, because people don't act on them. And it's really, for me, it's very interesting to see your journey from afar. Obviously, we're just meeting here, and it's been a pleasure. I want to be very respectful of your time as well, but it's been very interesting to watch your journey the last couple of years, because the first time I saw you was just before COVID, and I saw a clip on, I think it was Instagram or something, and I was just like, there's no way this is real. This is CG, what? And I did more digging, and it's real. It's real.
So it was quite fun. For the first year, there was a significant number of people, especially because we launched on April Fool's Day, which was a cheeky, deliberate thing. Nice. We thought we'd get lots of people like wondering if it was real.
That's very wild.
And every now and then you still get people going, yeah, it has to be fake, it has to be cables. Well, we would be super geniuses if we've done 200 events in 38 countries with cables. I mean, that cable system is pretty gnarly. But we do make it look really easy, and that's really
system that keeps you safe, that harnesses you in.
Yeah, they do exist for movies, and we've just done a movie I can't talk about, literally The Pain of Death, where ironically one of my team was being cabled around with the suit off. I'll have great fun sharing that when I'm allowed to, because I'll think I'll take the mickey out of people. I'll say, look, we're finally going to reveal, here's the cable system, because he's just been beautifully winched around this film set to get to the launch point. And the reason we're doing the movie is because joyously they reached out and said, we were going to CGI the whole flight thing, but you're doing it for real, so we don't want to bother. We want it authentic. I can't say any more about the movie, but it's really fun that they've come to us to say that. And actually, when we launched, the Iron Man 1 CGI team, I wish I'd kept their details, because they reached out really early on. The Iron Man 1 guys reached out and went, oh, you know that scene when Downey Jr. is, or Tony Stark is in the garage, like wobbling around and crashing into all his supercars, and then there's a moment where he sort of suddenly like gets it and stiffens up and looks up and like, oh, I've got it. If you watch on any of our Instagrams when people learn how to do this, the latest one's my 14-year-old when he's still on the tether, but you could see him just look up and like relax. There is a moment where your brain goes, oh, like when your parents let go of the saddle on your bike, or when you've got it surfing, or when you're skiing, and it's like, I'm handing the keys to my subconscious and I'm never going to give them, ask for them back again. That happens, and they reached out and said, oh my god, you've actually gone and kind of done what we had to guess it might be like. So yeah, it's kind of cool, that intersection between CGI and science fiction and what we've actually gone and done. But yeah, there's not really. There is a hoverboard thing, but it has to launch and land from a raised platform. There's only one guy that does it. Right. There is an original jetpack thing, but it's been around 15 years, and I think they've sort of exhausted things they can do with it. I think there's just endless things we can do with ours. And I mean, we've even built an electric version of it, and it does fly. You
Whoa.
need lighter batteries to make it useful, but
Right.
yeah, I think there's a lot further to go with what we're up to anyway.
Are you guys working with some
Insane.
battery experts and energy experts to try and get flight times?
No, not really. I mean,
Time?
you always think that, right? But if you think about it, everybody and his dog wants better batteries, right? Mobile phone people
Yep.
to electric car people, whatever.
It'll happen.
They have a much bigger reason to go and spend billions on trying to come up with the best batteries. We just wait until they become more available, because yes, you can find any number of small research groups that think they've got 10% more than everybody else, but they'll need another $500,000 to get by the next 6 months, and probably only 1 in 100 of those companies are actually make something that doesn't blow up and actually is reproducible. So no, okay. We're going to wait, and it is a sad fact that even the best batteries out there are pound for pound, awful compared to fuel. So the good news is, though, that we can run biojet and biodiesel, and we have done before. We just don't consume very much, so it's not really, we run a couple of Teslas in the UK, and they have saved more fuel than we burn, because we just don't burn very much.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a really exciting future as different energy storage systems come online.
It's truly fascinating, my man. Before we let you go, just take a little moment to breathe. I want you to think back to the younger Richard, maybe right before things popped off, maybe listening to the naysayers. I'm sure there were a few that you can now just gracefully tell them to fuck off and that look at me now type attitude, because that's where you are. You have literally started an industry. So amazing. But what would you say right now, looking back, because now the grass, hindsight's always 20/20, but that younger Richard probably had a little bit of anxiety. What would you tell that younger innovation and innovator right now as some form of advice, wisdom, whatever you want to call it, but also for any listeners that are maybe on the journey in your shoes, about to take the leap into something pretty incredible?
I mean, it's tricky to look back and say what I would have said to myself, because I wouldn't have said to myself, "Don't worry, it'll all be fine," because I unless I'm guaranteeing that, I would have said to my future self, "Well, no, I'm still going to be as paranoid and as diligent and as work as hard as I can to minimize that risk." And actually, it could have been the worst thing to say, "Don't worry, it'll all work out fine." I then relax and find it doesn't. And on that subject, I would say it's probably more useful if I try and offer some guidance to other people trying to go down any journey of doing something novel and different and uncharted. And that's what life is about in my mind, right? It's getting off the sofa and running that 5K park run, or setting up your competitor to Google or whatever. They're all different scales of the same process. They're all like, oh my God, this looks difficult and difficult and dangerous and tricky, and it might not work out. I really do mean it, that you've got to throw that childlike anything's possible attitude at the problem, but at the same time, and that's great, and I think America's brilliant at that. Europe's terrible at that. We're all very, very miserable about it. It's all going to work out. Yeah, yes, it's all going to work. Have that can-do attitude, but at the same time, and we're good at this in Britain, look at all the things that might go wrong. Don't ignore them, and imagine scenario plan for as many of those as you can. And accept that most of those are going to happen. A whole load that you never imagined are going to happen. Can you still get back up again? And I mean, safety, of course, number one. Reputationally, don't piss people off. Don't leave a trail of upset people or the authorities. That's for us, is go up to 10,000 feet with a base jumping rig. Well, hey, get a social media thing. And then funnily wonder why the authorities don't give you any permission. We have an amazing relationship with the FAA, CAA, Military Aviation Authority, because we've never done that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then the final one is, financially. Can you recover from each of your experiments, or are you just going to throw everything at one mad idea and hope it works? Hope and risk. I don't have much respect for people who just throw everything at one idea and go, well, let's just see, woo, because I read a business book and it said, just believe and it will be great. No, it won't. No, it's a slog. It's a miserable slog of most things going wrong. And you've got to have that almost military-like robustness to keep getting back up again, and have that endurance. And that's the best thing I can offer, really. It's not that blind business book kind of naivety of just, read the one entrepreneur who did have their first idea succeed. That's rubbish. That just doesn't happen.
That's an incredible way to put it, and to wrap this one up, man. You are literally the real life Iron Man. We can't thank you enough for coming on the Call to Action podcast, Richard. I I could sit here and listen to you talk for probably 3 hours, but obviously you live a very
Well, come and have a go sometime. You have to jump in.
Yes.
Come and get clipped in and have a go. Because if you like it now, there's 3 levels of this. You see it online, and yes, it does look pretty cool online. You see it live. That is, no matter what I say to you, there is nothing that can prepare. It's that air show type whack in your chest, and your brain goes, no, that has to be fake, when you'll just see people there. And then the final stage is actually get inside it and then realize it's actually really calm and simple. Those are the 3 levels. You've only done level 1, so
and I have
you have to work through the other 2 levels.
Yeah, so I'm excited, man. So thank you again.
Let's get there.
We're gonna link everything in the description, and man, just continue watching this journey, and maybe one day we can have another podcast somewhere down the line when you're doing some crazy stuff, and we can touch base and update the listener base. But thank you.
We'll do one on site.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks very much. Nice to talk to you.